Right, so I'm Alex. I'm a developer. Used to do quite a lot of .NET, haven't in the last 2 years, but I do tinker about with it when I can. So recently, to try and keep up with my .NET knowledge, I started playing about with Blazor. So this talk is about building try.NET or .NET Interactive in Blazor WebAssembly. So if you don't know about try.NET, Microsoft a couple of years ago brought out a way to have an embeddable code on your website with just a chunk of JavaScript. It embeds a Monaco editor and you can run it and compile it in the browser. Problem with that is it's server-client code. So it's a .NET package. Just pull it down with the NuGet, and it's available for C#, F#, PowerShell, and if you've used Jupyter Notebooks before, it's a way of having code and documentation running at the same time and the same thing. So it's a good way of keeping your code documented. Now, because I wanted to try this sort of concept out, I was playing about with the tool itself, but if I wanted to make this available for you to try it on the browser, I'd have to pay for hosting, and I'm cheap, so I didn't want to do that. So I thought, how can I do it? So first, I'll just quickly go through a demo of .NET Interactive. I'll show you the slides, and then I'll show it for real. I just didn't know if the demo gods would be kind to us. So pull down the tool, and then basically just run Interactive like you would any other .NET tool. Now, when I was doing some research on this, it used to have different inputs. So standard I/O used to be HTTP. So if you see some demos or examples, it might reference the old version and doesn't work. So I was looking in the code actually, which is good because it was at GitHub, so I could see it and find the actual commands you needed, because the first time I tried it, it just didn't work. So it's a tool that runs, it starts up a mini Kestrel server, and as you can see, there's a lovely set of JSON returns with all the different events that are happening for the interactive tool. Luckily, I found some discussions on GitHub where someone had made a quick example of how to interact with .NET Interactive through a front-end web page. So you can basically pull in some code from the .NET Interactive server that's running in the background and communicate with it. You just join, subscribe to the events, and watch for them. So there's a number of events that are running in .NET Interactive, and you can listen to these and then act accordingly depending on what it is. Probably the useful one for me was the standard output value produced, because that's whatever was happening from the console. If you've written anything to it, you can grab what's in. So I'll quickly jump to the demo and see if this will work. So we've got .NET tool, we want to run interactive in the studio. Okay, it might start. Yep. So you can see there's a lot of events, and then I've got a little blind app. It's connecting to port 9000, which is what's running in this. And then, as you can see, it's just subscribing to the kernel events, and then I'm doing some really noddy parsing of the events that come back. So if I run npm start, and we'll open up the browser, you can see all it takes is some code input. So simple as an input box. You could make it a Monaco editor if you wanted and have full IntelliSense, which I'll show you in Blazor Interactive. But if we submit the code, you can see events were flying in. I'm parsing them just to make it a bit easier to see what's going on. But you can see that the submit code events being triggered. It's noticed that it's C#, so it is clever enough to work out what type of language you're writing in. So C#, F#, VB.NET. And then it's seen the console write line. And it's returned that in the standard output produced, and then I've just noddily put it in a nice console thing. You can tell I'm a designer. Front end is one of my skills. So this is great and it's easy to do, but how do I actually put this on a website that I don't have to pay for? So I decided Blazor WASM would be the way forward for this. So if you've not used Blazor, I think you should probably start looking into it, because it's kind of, Microsoft's gone all in on it and it's not looking like it's going anywhere. There's two, technically three now, types of Blazor. So you've got Blazor server, Blazor WASM, which is front end, and then in .NET 8 they've got kind of Blazor unified, where it's a combination of both, and it'll dynamically decide whether to serve stuff from the server or actually use the client. It's great. So the whole point of it was, I presume everyone hates JavaScript. Let's not use JavaScript, let's just write everything in C# because we know and love it, and then compile it to WASM and it'll run in the browser. That's not strictly true, because you still need to interop with some JavaScript libraries, and I am in this application anyway, so it's a little bit of a lie. But yeah, it produces a single page application, but it's supposed to be using just one knowledge of .NET, instead of having to learn every fancy new front-end technology that comes out every week and then disappears because Google will deprecate it. So what's Blazor Interactive? It's a website that compile and run the code in the browser. So it's a sneak peek of what it is. It's a Monaco editor, list of assemblies that you need to use while you're writing your code, and then a pretty output window. So I'll get to the demo in a bit, but I'll go through some of how I made it. So alternatives, I don't know, you've probably heard of .NET Fiddle. Yeah. You can go on there and write in your code and compile it quickly, so you don't need a laptop running with a framework on it. You can do it in the browser. With the presentation and this project that I've been working on, I found Sharp Lab as well, which is quite a nice alternative, and that's actually open source as well, so if you wanted to see how they did it, it's available. So yeah, I'll run through how I made Blazor, or how we made Blazor Interactive. So there's a package you can pull down for compiling code. So there's a C# one, there's a VB one, and you can basically compile. You can send some code to this method and get an assembly out of it. So everyone loves a mermaid diagram, so here is one. So the compiler takes a few inputs. You've got the syntax tree that you make from the code that you've written, compilation options, some references that you need to actually your namespaces you're using, and then give it a name because you can be output in a file. Once you've compiled it, you can emit it to an assembly. So you've now got a DLL somewhere on your machine. You can then create an instance of that and invoke it. So the syntax tree, as you saw in the .NET Interactive demo, had a simple input box. Grab the code from that, pass it to a syntax tree method, and you've got your AST there to use. Compilation options, as you probably know, you can build DLLs, console apps, web apps. There's obviously all these options that are running in the MS build under the hood. I'm now trying to do the same as BS, so not an easy task. You want a list of usings. You probably want system as a minimum, because without system you can't really do anything, and the simplest way is to write a console statement, so pull that in. Metadata references. So we need the different references, like I said, system and anything else we're using. You've got to get them from somewhere. So if you're running the machine, you're running your code locally on your machine, you can grab them from the app domain. This gets a little bit trickier when you're on the web and you're on a front-end application, because you've not got the DLLs there because it's in the browser. A property in your project that's on by default is publishing with it trimmed, so it'll compress all of the DLLs into one, or as few as it can. When we get further down the line, when I show you the different DLLs that are served on the app, we'll want them separate so that we can get all of the DLLs to use the individual calls that won't cause problems. But yeah, so Blazor Interactive, will show the actual demo, probably makes a bit more sense that way. When you run a web page, you all know that it's serving files across the wire. So You'll see the usual CSS, JavaScript, HTML files, but as you can see there, there's a number of DLLs, which you probably wouldn't see normally in a web page app. Because this is Blazor, it's serving them as well. So there's quite a few, and they're quite, you can see they're not bad size actually, but one of the problems with Blazor WASM when it first came out was it was very slow loading. When you start a web page up, it'll download the whole of WASM for like 20, 30 megs, but they've kind of been able to trim that down with later versions, which has been good. So I was saying I need a list of those DLLs to be able to use them in my compilation. This is quite a unique case for this app. You wouldn't do this normally on a Blazor app, but knowing what DLLs have been served is actually put in a Blazor boot JSON. So any WASM app that you deploy has a nice reference list of all these apps, so I can just get from there. As you'll see, and I can show you when we're doing the proper demo, you might not see those DLLs showing in your network tab, and that's because luckily browsers will cache them, so you can actually grab the files from the cache if you need to. So they are still there, just because it's not shown in the network request, it's just grabbing it from somewhere. So at a very, very high level, Blazor Interactive is basically taking the code from the screen that you've input, grabbing assemblies from web calls that it's gone out and got, compiling them, and then outputting them to the screen. So I'll show you the demo. So it's defaulting to C#. We've got more languages. As you can see, you can get different versions of the compiler, so you can go back to whatever version is being deployed. So I'm deploying this on GitHub pages with the latest Ubuntu image, and then telling it to install .NET on it. So depending on what version you've told it to install, it'll change what versions of C# are available for you to use. Monaco editor, you probably all know from VS Code. This is freely available and you can use in any website you want. It's quite nice. It's got a theme picker as well. So when the app loads up, it goes and makes a web call. Well, it first grabs that Blazor boot JSON file, gets all of the DLLs that it's got access to, and then requests across the wire for a copy of those, so that I've got them to then pass to the C# compilation method. So when I press compile on console.writeline, if it works, it'll output the code I've put in there. So if I say so that's obviously not a great example or complex one. So I've started trying to add new samples in to try and give people ideas of what they can do. So Fibonacci, everyone knows the Fibonacci cursor call. So you can see that the namespaces have changed. There was 4 in the simple one, and in Fib it's gone to 5, and that's because it's automatically selected link, because I've got some configuration telling it these are the extra libraries that you'd need for this to run. Because if we were to untick link and press compile, we'll get an error because it doesn't have reference to this library or DLL and can't run it. So take the link again, it's then grabbed that, passed it across to the function and output it. Jump back to the slides. Sorry, there's a bit of jumping back. I didn't know whether to just do demos right at the end or kind of do it in between, but either way you got that. So yeah, so upcoming features. I've done C# first. VB's got its own NuGet package to pull down, and you can compile VB code. And we all want to do F# because it's cool. Stats. If you've seen .NET Fiddle, it'll tell you how long it took to run, the memory usage, things like that. So that would be a nice kind of addition to show. Another one which would be nice is, could we pull a file from NuGet, so another library, pull that in and add that to the compilation, so you could use third-party libraries. So that'll add some complexity of the fact that I've got to grab the package over the wire, unzip it, and then work out what dependencies are part of that NuGet package as well. And then am I going to get dependency kind of conflicts and stuff? So that'll be a fun addition. Everyone loves IL because everyone can read it. Why not show a version of it as IL? That would be cool. And then another one I found was this Roslyn coder. So another guy, .NET guy, wrote this tool where you can see the API calls. So it generates small. It'll show you the different members and the kind of invocation stack. So I thought, again, while someone's done the work for us, it might be easy just to add that in and just have another way of showing some code. But then yeah, I'll just bore you with some links. So try.net if you want to see it in for real. We've got website documentation and code. It's all on GitHub, so you can see how it works. .NET Interactive blog post. It's quite an old one, so there's probably been updates since then, but there's the GitHub repo and issues. So it's still not, so this was a kind of thought exercise, and is it possible to do, and would it be fun? But it was also, wouldn't it be cool to build my own sort of teaching website and have code examples on the page that you have to complete and then get to the next, so it's kind of a quiz type thing. So the way that the .NET Interactive plugin works at the moment, I don't think you can get much data out of it once it's ran. So I wouldn't be able to know like what data had gone into, whether someone's put the right answer and stuff. So if I can do it myself, it gives us more flexibility. The first demo I went through, that .NET Interactive Experiments, Colin Bard had put a nice example online, and that's where I borrowed it and added to it. So it's all up on there if you want to see it and try it out yourself. And while I was doing some research, I came across a blog post by Philippe from .NET Script fame. So I don't know if anyone uses .NET Script to do quick kind of testing of code that you want, so you don't have to build a full solution to try out a few things. So he'd done this in Blazor WebAssembly as well, but back in 2019 there was some missing parts of the library, and it doesn't actually compile and work. So luckily managed to get it to work. Future, you might know Steve Sanderson from MS. So he's pushing Blazor hard at the minute. So WASI and WASI time are parts of the things to use for WASM. And there's a tweet, or whatever they're called now, and a YouTube video that he's put together where in .NET 8 you can actually serve a web API in Blazor WASM front end. So you can have things like self-detonating applications on a server, so you could test like viruses and things like that. But what I thought would be possible is I could then run .NET Interactive in Blazor WASM, so I don't have to worry about working out which assemblies I need, compiling it and all of that. I just send it the code, it does the hard work and just outputs it. So I'm slowly hacking about on another project, but getting the WASI time and WASI SDK to work is not trivial, because it's all separate binaries and permissions and fun. So yeah, this hasn't just been me doing it. I've been lucky to work with Rob, who's here tonight, and another one of my friends, Dan. So it was fun to kind of play about with colleagues to try and get it working, so I wasn't just doing it by myself. But yeah, that's it. Unless there's any questions. I probably rushed through that far too quickly, because I knew I would, but yeah, probably jump back to any point. So,
what's the limitations on this at the moment then, Alex, in terms of what you can actually run on it?
So I didn't actually talk about it properly, did I? So It's only outputting console write lines. So basically, I'm redirecting the console writer to a string writer, storing that, and then passing that back to my function so I can output it on the screen. Obviously, I don't really want it building a DLL that's then available for someone to grab, because you could do weird things with it, and how much write. Well, we've got write actions on the server on GitHub, but yeah, it's for the minute. If you didn't write a console write, you'd get no output.
Okay.
So you've got to store whatever you're doing and pass it back.
I think one of the massive limitations with it at the minute is when WebAssembly doesn't have direct access to the DOM. So you have to use some form of JavaScript interlope for you to actually be able to change the page based on the output of the C#. So as it stands right now, it's not too useful without also having to write JavaScript with it.
So that one of the reasons this Blazor, the Monaco editor, someone's made a wrapper around it and Blazorified it, so you can talk back and forth, which is good. But yeah, we did start looking to see how we could do it ourselves, but there's a lot of things that you've got to play with, and it's a lot of work. So port your JS libraries to Blazor, and then just be far easier, and we don't have to worry about JavaScript anymore.
I mean, is it efficient loading the actual WASM binaries down in the browser in terms of versus like a React library versus?
I haven't done any comparisons, but from the slides, kind of they're not massive sizes. Wrong one, sorry. Yeah, so it's like 15 kilobytes, 16. Obviously, every kilobyte counts, but yeah, I haven't really gone to that level of. It was more can it be done than is it the best way to do it.
Just more discussion about Blazor WebAssembly. What's the purpose of it, do you think, or where does it go to? Because, for example, I understand how WebAssembly works. Great for a .NET developer to be able to write JavaScript, but surely you're not going to deploy this on a very 100,000 requests website. So do you think it's built for those quick websites that those .NET developers have to build, and that's the limitation of it?
Well, interestingly to see the way .NET's going, where they're doing the unified approach, having kind of you can tell a page whether you want to have it served from the server or the client, but they've started making it clever, so it'll decide, actually, do I need to go and get anything from the server on this request, and it'll do if it needs to. So I think WASM was just added to kind of go against, like, compete against the other sort of SPAs and give .NET developers an option. But yeah, I think if you're going to build a kind of proper functioning app, you're going to need server, because you've got to hide stuff away as well, haven't you? You're not going to have databases and keys and stuff served down to the front, are you? So
yeah. Because I've played around I'm an API developer. It's different front end to my business, so. But I saw good things for Blazor. Based on if you had like an internal application or just a very quick website. You don't have to. Well, you still have to know a little bit of JavaScript, but I don't have to go down to the terrible details of it. For that, but anything that you want to like be high efficient, you would just write JavaScript when you build.
I think the fact that it compiles to JavaScript for you, I don't know how better optimized it is, but
I know you can build those modules for React and everything else to interact with it, interop with it. So. It's just more just an open question about what's Microsoft's plan here. It definitely looks like a place. I still see websites built on web form still, so that's a great alternative for them to migrate over straight away.
And I think there was a migration tool that they were building to try and help with that. But yeah, they did the same for core to framework, and it doesn't always work. So it's sometimes better just to start.
Yeah, I had a
Fresh.
good application for this before where I built an offline web app in the past, but I had to then do everything in JavaScript to build, was it the index DB?
Oh, right, yeah.
But I know you can do that with this now, and yeah, that would be a great alternative, because then, yeah, you have to write in JavaScript, or learn JavaScript.
Yeah.
In terms of assemblies, is there anything that's actually missing? Because like I saw some collections on there, but not generic. So is there things that are missing that aren't pulled down?
So it depends what I've actually put in the project itself as well. So if I've included it in my Blazor application, it'll be available, and I have done some filtering on this to get rid of certain assemblies just because I didn't think we needed the use of them. I can't remember which ones I filtered, probably some of the private ones and things like that. But yeah, you can serve whichever ones you want. They just have to be in your original .NET project that you're building. But hence that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get NuGet as a feature, so then the possibilities technically are endless then.
It's more or less just the full .NET runtime in the browser basically, isn't it? Yeah.
But I think .NET 8 is changing security permissions about actually serving the DLLs, so this project might actually not work in the next version, so I'll have to look at getting a way around that, but it might mean we'll have to decompile them or do some. There's some security feature someone mentioned was possibly making it difficult.
So it was a sort of comment regarding what you were saying about just the Blazor thing as well, is that you mentioned like build a whole new site, and it's like actually with Blazor you get the components themselves. So if you've already got an Angular website or whatever it is, you can build a small component like a list component or something like that in C#, and then the hooks are still there for you from Angular to be able to interact with that Blazor component. And also those Blazor components now work with like MAUI for doing the mobile development. So if you're trying to go and have components that are common on your website and you don't have to rewrite them for mobile, then you've got that option. And if you don't want to go with MAUI, then even if you've got an app that's just JavaScript that you build, you can still use that.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that into where you can build as components and then you can interact them through JavaScript. Yeah.
So it's not about like you don't have to build a whole thing. You could really start. That should be really targeted and create something.
That's good. See if you've got a DLL, you can just have the entry point to it. Yeah.
Yeah, Blazor bindings if you want to look them up. I'm not too sure about the idea of doing that over native and just doing everything in MAUI properly, but that's the way they're going, I think.
If it's like business applications where you're trying to get consistency across iOS and Android, you're not bothered about giving that consumer, oh, I've got an iPhone, so it's got to look like an iPhone, or it's got to look like an Android. You just want it to be the same, because you don't. Sadly, there are line of business apps where you just have to do a manual, and it's like, for goodness sake, you didn't get a manual to use Facebook, did you? But you still managed to do it. You know, there are those situations.
Yeah, I do think Blazor is good for like a big organisation where you've got so many internal apps where you're just told to build some.
If it's functional
utility.
and it doesn't need to look pretty, then yeah, why not?
Just get something working, utility to output something or anything like that, but it's accessible.
I've seen some really good examples where they've had like a shell in MAUI and it brought two different applications with Blazor components, but in the client it can see both Blazor components and they can talk to each other, so it can feed the data into one or the other, and you can start to do clever things with sort of dynamic composition of the page.
Does this have any protections against like remote code execution?
Well, I haven't for this because it's hosted on GitHub pages and it's all served to your machine, so it's running locally. So there isn't, because it's that, there isn't really a way to get into it. But
You should be able to protect against that from where it's hosted, but there's nothing to prevent anyone downloading the DLLs and then decompile them.
Yeah.
But that's the same. It's like all JavaScript code is freely accessible.
Yeah.
I was just thinking if someone had that hosted and you had access to the file or the directory API, you could possibly get access to files and directories within the server that it's hosted in.
Yeah.
I'm
But-
sure.
Yeah, I think there's certain blocks because of the way it's served on GitHub pages and
Yeah.
their permissions. But yeah,
Okay.
it's I didn't think about the security because I didn't need to.
I think GitHub would tell you if there's any.
Yeah.
Well, I've done this mistake for the API key and it's told me.
Mm.
I'm sure it would tell you. But yeah, I'm sure some of them would tell you. Well, the Azure and everyone would tell you that there's some code there would be potentially exploited.
Yeah.
Does it matter which browser you use?
Well, that was Safari, which you'd be surprised at, because no one uses it. But yeah, no, it should
It's the
just
worst
work.
one.
They're all the same now.
Except it in Explorer maybe.
Yeah,
Well, I
you
use
can-
Chrome now,
Yeah.
But all the latest ones.
It should, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's
Move by 11.
that's kind of handled by
by
Blazor
sounds
and the
fun,
version of Blazor that you're using, that it's compiling it to just HTML and JavaScript anyway. So, you can technically use features that might only be supported in certain versions of browsers,
Yeah.
but that would be determined by what you've developed. Not. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Well, that's yeah. You might use some JavaScript that's HTML5 features that's only available in Chrome, for example, or Chromium.
But for instance, Blazor WASM doesn't have the crypto type libraries working yet. So I've been porting another app that I've built, like a utility app that converts X to Y and string trims and stuff like that. And one of them was to do MD5 hashing, and you can't do that yet because there isn't a library that's available to do that in Blazor WASM. So
But that'll catch up in time.
Yeah,
won't it?
yeah. Cool. Well, thank you very much.